Hello everybody and welcome to the last day of bookmas. I've seen a lot of people say that bookmas has gone by fast, but honestly this has been the longest 12 days of my life. Hello, my name is Jessie and I post all things bookish, but if you're new, thanks for joining. If you have been here for a while now, welcome back. We're gonna get into my 25 books that I want to read in 2025. These are books that I will get to. I am putting my foot down and I'm going to read these books. Some of these are books that have already been released. I have some on my physical TBR that I'm going to show you first, and then we will go into books that have already been released for each section, and then new releases coming out in 2025. So hopefully you guys can still get some books to add to your TBR that are coming out next year. I have this split up into 3 different sections. First we're going to talk about fantasy, and then I have some literary contemporary fiction, and then we're going to go into a little bit of romance. Okay, actually I lied. The first book is a horror book, but this is the only one that I have. Guess what, guys? This is it. I am gonna be really mad at myself if I don't finish this in 2025. I've been reading this since 2022. I can't start a book and then read books in between because I'm never gonna pick the first book up again, and this is exactly what I did with it. I started reading it in 2022, set it down, and just didn't pick it up again. I actually read a little bit, I think like 200 pages this year, but I am about halfway through this book. If I don't finish this next year, I'm giving up. I'm simply giving up. This is no surprise as well. If you've watched many of my videos, I've talked about this book so often. This has been on my TBR for over a year now. I will get to this early 2025 though. This is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is one of those situations where I feel like there is a right time to read a book, or I was waiting for the right time, but you know, there's never going to be a right time, and I just need to read this. I know that I wanted to read this in the winter time, so we're here. We're doing it. This is a dark academia. I'm sure a lot of people have heard about the plot of this, but we're following our main character, Alex Stern, and she is like the only survivor of a homicide. She ends up at this hospital, and then when she wakes up in this hospital, she finds out that she's getting a full ride to Yale, and she has no idea how because she's lived a very bad life. She had no intention to go to Yale. She never thought she could get in, but somehow she's going to Yale, and she's trying to figure out how or why that's even happening. So then she goes there. There's a whole lot of secret society stuff going on, a lot of mysterious things happening. Just your typical dark academia book. I've heard a lot of great things about this, and I have a feeling that I'm really gonna love it. So we're gonna do it. Next I have Malice by John Gwynne. This is a big chunker of a book, but I was just flipping through this when I was taking this book off my TBR cart to put in this video, and it's only a little over 600 pages, which, okay, that's still a little long, but I thought this was gonna be at least 800, and it's not. The pages are just really thick. I've never read anything by John Gwynne. I've heard great things though. This is The Faithful and the Fallen. This is book 1. We're following 4 different people. We have Corbin, who wants nothing more than to be a warrior. We have Evnis, who has sacrificed way too much, but he wants the power to rule. We have Veritas, who is the newest member of the warband for the High Prince, and he is one of the most skilled swordsmen. And then we have the High Prince, Nether. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it exactly, but it says he has ideas and a lot of plans, and many of them don't involve his father, the High King, and nor does he agree to his father's idea to summon the fellow kings to council. It's just gonna be crazy times, and I'm ready for it. And then lastly, on my physical TBR, I do have this whole shelf right here. If you guys can see, this is the Shadowhunters universe. I've only read the Mortal Instruments series, which is the first 6 books, but I have 3 trilogies and 9 books that I need to get through, but I want to reread the Mortal Instruments before I get into those, so I have a refresh on the world. And I know there's like a certain reading order that is suggested, so I'm probably going to do that, but I want to read all those books, so that's gonna be fun. I gotta get comfy in all my videos, guys. I'm sorry. Next, we're talking about books that have already been released, but I do not own yet. The first one I have is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Greenbone saga, and in this book we are following the Caw family. They are one of 2 crime syndicates that control the island of Kakan. I don't know exactly how these words are pronounced. I'm sorry if I'm butchering them, but it is the only place in this world that produces this rare magical jade, and this jade grants people with the right training and heritage a whole bunch of superhuman abilities. We have the Greenbone clan, who once protected this land, and nowadays it's not necessarily looking that way. There's a bustling post-war metropolis full of fast cars and foreign money. So the Caws and their rivals erupt into war in the streets, and this war will determine the fates of the Greenbone and the future of Kakan itself. Next up we have An Ember in the Ashes. This book series is popping off right now, even though it is quite older. This is about Leia and Elias. Leia is a slave and Elias is a soldier, and they live under this martial empire where if you don't give your blood to this empire, everything's going to be destroyed for you. So Leia lives with her grandparents and her older brother kind of on the outskirts. They don't even want to mess with this empire because they know what's going to happen to anybody that does nothing good. Leia's brother ends up getting arrested for treason, so she has to make this decision to save him, but in order to save him, she has to get help from these rebels, but she's going to risk her life because she will then be spying from the inside of this empire. That is when Leia meets Elias. He is a soldier, but he doesn't really want to be a soldier. He doesn't like how this empire is running. They obviously have the same idea and outlook on what they want their future to be, so I think they end up working together. This sounds like it's going to be a little bit of a romance in here as well. I'm not sure on that. but I'm very excited. Next, we have Anathema by Carrie Lake. I read one book by this author and I really enjoyed her writing. This one, there seems to be a lot to this. This is a dark gothic fantasy. We have these terrifying woods with cursed souls and a lot of grotesque creatures. So this forest is called Witchnell, which is where sinners go to die. Maybeth, our main character, she knows not to go into these woods, but something happens and she ends up having to cross this bone arch type thing, which is going to lead her into there. And then she meets this cursed lord and this assassin, and then she finds out that her blood is going to fix this curse and could potentially fix all the evil in Witchnell. This one also seems chaotic, but I'm down. I'm so down because of how much I loved her other book. And this book is the first in a series. I don't know how long the series is going to be, but I'm ready for another series. Should I be reading more series? No, but I don't care. Next up, I have Rose in Chains by Julie Soto. This is her dive into fantasy for the very first time. The only thing I really know about this is that this is based off of Hermione. Oh, I was going to say Hermione and Hermione. I didn't realize that I already put Draco and Hermione together. This is based off of Draco and Hermione from Harry Potter. I believe she wrote a fan fiction a while ago. She's changing things in it and getting it traditionally published. So this is a fantasy about her Hermione obsession, I guess. That's all I know. Next, we have Half City by Kate Golden. There's not any information on this other than the fact that in the last book of the Sacred Stones trilogy, there was an announcement for this book in this new series. And all I know is that it's going to be a academic setting with demons and demon hunters. That's all I can give you, but I have high hopes for it. Next up, we have Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillick. This is the author of the Shepherd's King duology, which is One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. I absolutely love this. I love the writing. It was very unique. I'm expecting a lot from this author in future books. I also love this cover so much. I love the covers of the other books as well. This is about our main character, Sybil, and she can see the future. She sees these dreams. So she receives these dreams, and she doesn't necessarily want to, but she has to live with this. She's receiving visions from these 6 figures called omens. There's also other women who see these visions as well. They're called diviners. Eventually this knight ends up showing up, and after this happens, her other sister diviners end up dropping one by one. She has no idea where they're going or what's happening to them, so she ends up teaming up with this knight that has arrived to save her sisters, and we're gonna get a little romance between them. I think it's gonna be super fun. This also seems like a pretty unique concept. I'm excited to see what this author can do, and I'm excited to read more by Rachel Gillick. Next up, I have Rebel Witch by Kristen Cesarelli. This is the second book in the Heartless Hunter duology. Heartless Hunter has been talked about so often, so I'm going to just talk about this very quick, but it is about a witch and a witch hunter. This is a young adult fantasy romance. Our main character is the witch, and she is trying to save all these witches because they are getting hunted. So she goes on a little spy mission and is trying to figure out who is doing this and where they're going, and then she's trying to save them before the witch hunter can get to them. But the witch hunter does not know that she is a witch. So it's a lot of back and forth, but it's so interesting, and I love the first book, so I'm very excited for the second one. Next, I have The Ballad of Falling Dragons. This book comes after When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. The first book was long, but I feel like we didn't get too much on what the plot necessarily is going to be. We did have this secret mystery aspect to it that we found out. I'm just excited to see where this series goes. I really like the writing in the first book, and if this plot gets very entertaining and chaotic, I'm gonna absolutely love this series, I think. And it comes out in October. Very long wait, but I can be patient. Next up, we have A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. This is her new release coming out in June. This is a fantasy inspired by Beauty and the Beast. We have our main character, True. She has this gift where she can paint the future. She's living with her mother and 2 younger sisters, and her father ends up getting lost at sea, so she's trying to figure out what happened to him, and she's looking after her mother and her 2 sisters now. So she ends up in some trouble with her family and trying to save them, and in order to save them, she agrees to marrying this dragon lord. He offers a fresh start for her mother and sisters and answers to what happened to her father, but in order for her to get all of this, she has to go live with this dragon lord undersea in his palace. And then she has to assist him in this plot to infiltrate the Dragon King's inner circle, which is just going to cause chaos on the mortal realm and the immortal realm. Who knows what's going to happen. Next up, I have The Sirens by Amelia Hart. This is a story of sisters separated by hundreds of years but bound together in more ways than they can imagine. We're following 2 different timelines. We have Lucy in 2019 and then Mary and Eliza in 1800. 2019, we have Lucy, who wakes up in her ex-lover's room with her hands around his throat. She's terrified because she doesn't know why this is happening. She goes out, she looks for her sister. Her sister ends up not being there, I believe. Yeah, so her sister is missing, and then Lucy waits for her return. As she's waiting, she starts to find out all these rumors about her sister's town. There's a whole bunch of tales about missing men that has been spread over decades. A baby abandoned in a sea-swept cave, whispers of women's voices on the waves. And it says all the while her dreams start to feel closer than ever. So then in 1800, we have Mary and Eliza. They are torn from their loving home in Ireland and forced onto a convict ship heading for Australia. And as the boat takes them further and further away, they end up experiencing strange things happening with their bodies. And it's called The Siren, so I'm assuming strange things happening to their bodies, they're going to be turning into something. We shall see. Lastly, for any type of fantasy, I have Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. This is her dive into more of a romance, but it's still going to be a lot of fantasy elements, I believe. And all we have about this one is Catabasis. It's an ancient Greek noun, and it means the story of a hero's descent to the underworld. We have two academic rivals from Cambridge, and they must travel to hell to rescue the soul of their advisor. And then that's all we know. If you like academic rivals to lovers, this one will be for you. Now going into some literary / contemporary fiction, we have first up, speaking on R.F. Kuang, I have Yellowface. I waited to read this book because I wanted it in paperback. It's coming out, I believe, in January. I've seen mixed reviews on this book, but I think it's just because the main character is somebody that you are technically meant to hate because she's doing bad things. She's a terrible person. It can be frustrating to a lot of readers since I know going into it that I'm probably going to hate the main character, or I'm supposed to hate the main character. I'm not going to be annoyed with that as much. But what I know about this is that we have a main character who stole an author's work and is claiming it as her own, and then they're getting all this popularity and fame for this author's work. My next two are both by Frederick Bachman. I have Beartown, which is a very winter-esque read. It's a small town called Beartown. There's a hockey team there. I know they're going into these like national finals or something. There's a big event that can happen to them. So this community is coming together, but a lot of things end up happening. Everybody's kind of turning against each other. They're all dealing with something because of whatever is happening. And then he also has a new release called My Friends coming out in June. I know nothing of this book. This doesn't have a synopsis or anything on Goodreads yet, so I can't tell you what it's about, but I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Lastly, for this, I actually have this book sitting next to me. This is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was on my fall TBR of this year, and I did not read it. One of our classics. I definitely want to read more classics. There's a few that I have in mind, but I do own this book, so I'll be focusing on this one, and then I'll probably dive into more as the year progresses. Lastly, we're going to get into our romance reads. I don't have many of these, but the first one that is already released is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. I think the third book in this series is coming out in 2025, so if you're caught up, you are prepared for the third book. I have not read any of them yet, and I really want to read a book by Kennedy Ryan. I've heard great things about her. I've seen interviews with her, and I just think she's an absolutely fantastic person. So I really want to read her books and support her. I think I pushed this one off because it was about a couple that they were already married. I think they're divorced now and they're working through their tough times with each other. And I don't necessarily like romance stories where there's a divorce or these couples are already together. I like very fresh and very new, but I know that it's going to be a good book. I just need to pick it up and see for myself. Next up, I have Between Friends and Lovers by, I don't want to butcher this name, so I'm going to put it on the screen. This is also something that I've heard nothing but great things about. I think I got this recommendation from Shaughnessy at first, and then I've seen other people read it as well. I don't know too much on what the plot is of this book. I've just heard great things about the connections between these characters. It says this is a swoon-worthy story of love and friendship in the age of social media. We have Josephine, who is known as Dr. Jojo. She has a large social media following, and she focuses on health, growth, and self-love. But behind the camera, Jo's story is more complicated. She finds her influencer career underwhelming, her potential career in medicine overwhelming, and she's hung up on her best friend Ezra. Ooh, this is juicy. He ends up showing up to his 30th birthday party with her childhood bully on his arm. And then we have another character, Malcolm. He's an author. He's writing his debut novel. He gets a lot of attention after this is released, and he's not one to want to be in the spotlight, so he's kind of freaking out at this penthouse party that he's at, and then Jo ends up saving him, and I guess he's been following her on social media for years. We're gonna get a lot of focus on how it's hard to balance social media and real life. I think it's gonna be very interesting. Next up, I have Deep End by Allie Hazelwood. This is her dive into sports romance. We're dealing with two swimmers, a swim coach who is very good at what he does, and then we have our main character who is a platform diver. Of course, with any Allie Hazelwood book, they're probably going to start off with a little bit of rivalry. I do have this book pre-ordered as well, so I'll get this as soon as it comes out. Next, we have Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. We have Samantha, and then we also have Xavier. I guess it starts off with him saying something really, really wrong, and Samantha wants to prove him wrong. And then I guess they end up going on a date. The summary is very confusing to me because she's like, okay, I gotta prove him wrong. And then they're on a date, and then she's saying that she doesn't want anything to do with him anymore, and she just needs to get him out of her life. Not entirely sure. We will see when this book comes out. Down to our last two. These books are fairly similar in what they revolve around. We have Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. This is following our two main characters, Alice and Hayden. They're getting a 1-month trial to write the biography for this lady named Margaret. They go to this little island, and she's giving each of them different information, little slices of her life. They're doing this competition to see who is going to end up writing the biography. So I don't know what this lady is up to, but it sounds like she's up to no good. We're gonna see along the way. Lastly, I have Story of My Life by Lucy Score. I almost said Lucy Hale. That's not correct. Story of My Life by Lucy Score. It's funny because as soon as I saw the post where she was announcing this book a couple days before, I was thinking we need a new release from Lucy Score. She's been publishing a lot of her older work with new covers and getting them traditionally published, but we haven't gotten a new story from her in a while. But this is about an author as well. We have Hazel. She's forced to move out of her Upper East Side apartment and is giving a final warning from her publisher. If she doesn't turn in a book by her next deadline, she's being let go. She ends up going to this small town in Pennsylvania to get a little bit of inspiration, but the small town ends up looking like it's on its last legs, and then she meets this grumpy contractor dude and they have their romance. This seems like very Hallmark-esque, where someone is having a bad time at their job, they go to a small town and start a new life. That is it for my 25 books that I want to read in 2025. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for joining me this Bookmas. I had tons of fun. I'm definitely going to be taking a break now. Even filming this video, I'm hating myself. I do have plans to upload one more video by the end of the year, so keep an eye out for that. But that is it. I will see you guys in my next video, whatever that may be. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for watching. If you want to subscribe to my channel, feel free. Let me know if you are adding any of these books to your TBR next year. And with that being said, I hope you have a great day or great night wherever you are, and I'll see you later. Bye.